Ukrainian President Zelensky just blasted Donald Trump in an open letter to Putin. Zelensky called out Donald Trump for promising to hand deliver all of Europe to Putin. And Zelensky said that if there can be any chance of peace, that should be pursued right now between Ukraine and Russia, and that Ukraine is prepared to enter into a sustainable ceasefire, notwithstanding Donald Trump's capitulation. By now, you know, earlier in the day, the news that Donald Trump was not going to be supplying Tomahawk missiles to Germany, and that the Trump regime would not be making good on commitments to NATO out of fear that it would potentially rub Putin the wrong way, when earlier today, Putin announced a $28 billion nuclear deal with Iran. At the same time, Donald Trump was saying that Iran cannot get any more nuclear dust, or it all needs to be handed over to the United States. But let me show you what Zelensky said right now. And I think this is one of the most powerful and pivotal moments of this war that was brought upon Ukraine by Russia's invasion. Here's what Zelensky said to Putin. "We have heard that you were promised in Alaska the resolution of certain issues concerning Ukraine and Europe, but you can see for yourself that Ukrainian and European issues are not decided in Anchorage." Essentially, Zelensky saying, we know from our intelligence community that Donald Trump promised to give you, Putin, all of Europe if you would give Donald Trump the Western Hemisphere and Greenland, and then Xi Jinping would get all of Asia and Africa. We know that was the multipolar deal that was cut. But guess what? The mid-powers of the world have united around Ukraine to form its own bloc, European countries, Australia, Canada, and we are ready to continue to stand up, and we will not abide by whatever the hell that deal was. Zelensky also wrote the following: "Whatever you say about NATO, geopolitics, and the Russian language, the war is your personal choice. A war without a real reason. That is how history will remember it. You did not expect full-scale resistance from Ukraine and did not predict that things would go this far. But we are all here in the 5th year of full-scale confrontation. Ukraine preserves its independence and will preserve it, despite any other predictions. Don't be afraid to get out of the war. That is the main thing needed from you now. We in Ukraine do not want permanent war. We know very well that without war is immeasurably better. You won't have enough money and political power to continue buying the loyalty of Russians as you have done for 26 years. We will do everything to make the world know about this. As you yourself say, everything must be counted." And again, this comes on the same day that not only did Putin announce a $28 billion nuclear deal with Iran, but Trump sent a delegation to St. Petersburg to announce with Kirill Dmitriev, Russia's envoy to the United States, some private public tunnel deal between Russia and Alaska. That's what Donald Trump was doing. At the same time, Putin was announcing a $28 billion deal with Iran. And you saw the video I made before where Donald Trump was then like, "I think the Ayatollah is a very professional man, very respectful. It would be an honor for me to meet the Ayatollah. I think we would get along very, very well." Let me just take a look at Zelensky's letter just so you see how powerful these words are. Here's how he addresses it. Zelensky writes, "Open letter to the President of the Russian Federation from the President of Ukraine." This is a type of letter that will go in the history books that we will be reading about for a long time. "When you came to power in Russia more than 26 years ago, many people in Ukraine viewed you positively. That is how it was, but that is now in the past. Now the overwhelming majority of Ukrainians view it positively that our long-range drones paid a visit to the opening of your forum in St. Petersburg, covering a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers. As you know very well, that distance is not the limit of our capabilities. This St. Petersburg conference is the conference that Donald Trump sent this delegation from the United States. And they were also, this United States delegation, showing off Donald Trump's ballroom and drone port to the people who attended the St. Petersburg conference. Zelensky goes on to say, "For 26 years, your time in power has completely changed the agenda of relations between Ukraine and Russia. From discussions about trade and other civilian matters, Our nations have moved to talking almost exclusively about strikes and losses. You have spent nearly half of your 26 years in power in Russia, waging war against Ukraine. Whatever you may say about NATO, geopolitics, or the Russian language, this war is your personal choice, a war without a real cause. That is how history will remember it. Those years could have been very different. We often hear that you are comfortable with this war. Of course, not in those cases when it comes to the security of your residence or your parade in Moscow. Your own life is valuable to you. But now we can see all the Russians are finally becoming less comfortable with the reality, with the fact that war is bringing more and more negative consequences to Russia. They do not like our drones and missiles. They do not like gasoline shortages and constantly rising prices. They do not like constant restrictions. They do not like your intention to launch a second wave of mobilization in order to expand the war into another direction in Ukraine or to use it against other countries neighboring Russia. They do not like the fact that there is no end in sight to your war. Yes, you can still force Russians to exist this way, but your resources are shrinking significantly. You will not have enough money or political capital to keep buying the loyalty of Russians the way you have for the past 26 years. And we will do everything we can to ensure that the world helps bring that moment closer. As you yourself like to say, we need to run the numbers. Yesterday, I received a report on the losses of your army on the front in Ukraine during May. Once again, the number exceeded 30,000 Russian soldiers killed and seriously wounded. We have been maintaining the level month after month, and we have video confirmation of every one of your losses. These are not empty claims. We know that 63% of your battlefield losses are killed, while only 37% are wounded. In the 21st century, no army can afford such a ratio, and the share of those killed will continue to grow. It is not as if we in Ukraine are concerned about the fate of Russian soldiers after everything your war has brought to our country. But I do care about Ukrainians. We are losing our people, and every loss is painful to us. Even when the ratio of Ukrainian losses to Russian losses is 1-5 or 1-6, it still matters greatly. It also matters that you regularly postpone every few months your own deadlines for capturing our regions, especially the Donetsk region, and you will not capture it this year either. Pause. Doesn't that sound a lot like Trump extending the deadlines arbitrarily and making up fake deadlines? But we in Ukraine do not want a permanent war. We know very well that life without war is infinitely better, and we want to achieve that. I am convinced that the majority of Russians would respond positively to this as well, and you know it. Many did not believe that Ukraine would be able to hold out for so long. You did not believe it, and those who advised you did not believe it either. This was a mistake. You did not expect full-scale resistance from Ukraine, and you did not foresee that things would go this far. Yet here we all are in the 5th year of this full-scale war. Do not be afraid to take the path out of this war. That is the main thing that is required of you now. Ukraine has preserved its independence, and it will preserve it despite all predictions to the contrary. We have united many around the world to stand with Ukraine and against you. We found the weapons and the financing we needed. We received support. You received sanctions. And this will continue until there is justice. We will not allow those who are trying to convince you that sanctions against Russia will be significantly eased and that support for Ukraine will be significantly reduced without any meaningful change in your position toward Ukraine to succeed. That's clearly directed at Donald Trump. The example of Orban shows how those who choose to help Russia in its war against us end in disgrace. Ukraine has endured harsh winters. While you tried to destroy our energy systems, we held firm. Even in the darkness, the resilience of Ukrainians remain intact. We brought the war onto your territory, and you would not have been able to cope without North Korea's help. You are the first ruler of Russia to turn to Pyongyang for assistance, and today you are fully dependent on China, also for the first time in Russia's history. You believed Ukrainians would not have the strength to defend themselves, yet today our people are helping partners in the Middle East and the Gulf build their own defenses. You hope for internal unrest in Ukraine. Instead, it was your own military formations that targeted a mutiny against you. June 23rd will mark another anniversary of that event, and silence will not erase that fact from history. And now it is you whom your own officials, businessmen, and propagandists look at with obvious fatigue. The world can see it. The world has not grown tired of Ukraine as you hoped it would, but there is a growing fatigue with Russia, even among those in the wider world who help you bypass sanctions and keep your economy afloat. You cannot fail to notice it. After 26 years in power, age is beginning to take its toll, and with time, the fatigue with you will only grow. We have seen intelligence reports showing that you are now considering plans to continue the war into 2027 and 2028. We also know that you hope ballistic missiles will achieve for you what everything else has failed to achieve. You want to draw Belarus even deeper into this war, and we are now forced to prepare for that as well. We see that you are trying to orchestrate something with Transnistria. Your propaganda threatens in one way or another every country neighboring Russia. Do you really want to go through all of this? The choice is yours now. Enough war. Ukraine proposes the end to war. This must be done honestly, with dignity, with guarantees that the war will not be reignited. We see that the United States is fully focused on the issue of Iran, and it would be wrong to simply wait until war in Europe returns to the center of its attention. Ukraine proposes ending this war through direct engagement between us and you. I am proposing a meeting. Everyone heard your representative smiling, saying, I could supposedly come to Moscow, but after these 26 years, there is nothing for a Ukrainian leader to do to your capital, just as there is nothing for a Russian leader to do in Kyiv. There are countries that have traditionally hosted leaders to resolve issues of war and peace. Switzerland, Turkey, and countries in the Arab world. Many are able and willing to host such a meeting. It is leaders who resolve these key issues. That has always been the case, and it always will be. I propose to set a clear date for such a meeting. We have heard that you were promised in Alaska the resolution of certain issues concerning Ukraine and Europe, but you can see for yourself that Ukraine and European issues are not decided in Anchorage. Other agreed participants could join the bilateral track to be established between us. Since the war is taking place in Europe, and since Ukraine needs security guarantees, while you also seek security guarantees for yourself, it would be logical to involve those who can genuinely serve as guarantors. We believe Europe should be part of this process, those who truly have the capacity to influence the situation. We also believe that the United States must be part of the process. This is what could help shape a new security architecture for our part of the world. We've already experienced many agreements with Russia, including the Minsk agreement that ultimately failed. That is why we must first find direct answers between us to the questions that remain and not hide from difficult issues behind formulas, technical working groups, or endless time lost in shuffle diplomacy. Your war has permanently set Ukraine and Russia apart. The front line today is the line from which diplomacy must begin. Ukraine is ready for a full ceasefire for the duration of the negotiations. This is a standard practice, and current developments around Iran only reinforce that point. An attempt to establish real silence is the best way to begin talking to one another. We believe it would not simply be an attempt, but a real ceasefire, if that is what you want. You know that the United States has the capability to monitor a ceasefire along the line where hostilities stop. Ukraine is ready for an all-for-all exchange of prisoners of war, and this could become a good prologue to ending the war. Serious steps must be taken to return civilians and children who were taken away during the war. We must determine what kind of future awaits the generations of Ukrainians in Russia who will come after us. If you do not personally come to the conclusion that it is time to end this war, Ukraine will continue fighting for its existence. We will have those who support us, but you too will have to fight much harder for your own existence, not Russia's, but your own. And this is not a threat from me or from Ukraine. It is a fact of Russian history that you know well. When Russia grows tired, change comes. We can work toward that fatigue. You can stop your war. Eternal memory to all those whose lives were taken by this war. Glory to Ukraine. There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.